Hello, it's Hayley again. This month I'm going to give you an update, starting with the most obvious thing. I've now switched to my natural hair full time. The change happened rather as a result of my previous video about asking about what I could do with the gym, but I sort of came to a point where I'm like, I have to do something, so I tried switching to my natural hair in the hopes that that would make life easier. Unfortunately there's been no change of yet. I still haven't gone back to the gym since using my natural hair, and although I'm really happy that I'm using my natural hair because it does mean I don't have to wear wigs and things like that and hair extensions, and I'm a hell of a lot more active while using my natural hair. I don't feel as restricted. I feel more myself, a more authentic and honest version of myself again. However, my natural hair is a long way from where I would want it to be, and initially I hadn't planned to use my natural hair until after I'd had my facial surgery and had my hairline lowered. Unfortunately, like I say, it hasn't helped with the gym after all, so I'm not too sure what the net gain, if any, there's been yet. I'm very worried about my natural hair. It's quite thin at the back, and it's also extremely frizzy, as you can see. And although the frizz is nice, it helps to hide the thin patch, which is all good. It just means that there's a lot to deal with and that it doesn't really do what I want it to do most of the time. And everyone suggests various lotions and potions for defrizzing it, but the trouble is if I defrizz it, it's all going to go see-through at the back again, so I really don't want to do that at the moment. I'm also worried about obviously using my natural hair. I'm worried that it's damaging it, and that, you know, I'm going to start losing it again, because up until now it's had the best part of 2 years under constant protection from various bits being covered, but now I'm using it all the time, and yeah, you do end up worrying a lot about it. If you've been following me on other social media, you've seen a couple of pictures by now with me using my natural hair. If you only follow me on my vlog, then this is it. Look at those bright red ears. Somebody must be talking about me. Moving on, I received a letter a couple of weeks ago from my general GP as a result of the blood tests that I had to have done previously and take with me to the gender clinic, which you'll hear more about later in an attached video. Basically, I now have a vitamin D deficiency, so I'm now taking 20,000 milligrams vitamin D in a capsule twice a week in an attempt to boost that back up. This is a common side effect of being on HRT and blockers. Obviously, to balance that out, they're giving me a supplement. I'm also trying to be better behaved with my diet in general, as I haven't gone back to the gym. I've reduced my meat intake from, you know, whenever I felt like, to just once a day. I've also been trying to get vitamin D from other sources such as eggs and tuna, which are the only things really that contain high concentrations that I like. So there's been a lot of chips and omelettes for lunch, and then a lot of tuna and potato for dinner and things like that at the moment, in an attempt to try and get the vitamin D and cut down the meat intake. I'm cutting down the meat mostly because I'd like to lose some mass, which you can only do by removing at least some protein from your diet. And then on top of that, I also, because I've only got one kidney, protein is very bad for your kidney. And I sort of got to the point where I discovered I was having like a fry up for breakfast, a bacon back for lunch, and then, you know, I was going home and having pie and chips for dinner, and it was all getting a bit silly. I was, you know, basically eating meat 3 times a day, which it's not normal, it's probably not healthy, so I reined that in. In other news, I went to the gender clinic, and I will be attaching shortly the video footage from that, my vlog that I did in the car immediately after exiting. Suffice this to say, it wasn't my second assessment as I hoped it had been. It was a nurse's assessment, and yeah, it wasn't quite what I was expecting. You'll see me in a few minutes describing that anyway. And the last point that I want to touch on today is the service that I'll be transitioning from, pun intended, the service that I'll be transitioning from, which is my private one, which is and then over to the NHS. My private one that I've been using, and the only reason why I bring this up is because although my time with them will be ending sometime in 2019, they're still a vital service for so many people, and they are constantly, it seems at least, under attack and review and God knows what else from basically the NHS citing best practice and best protocols for these sort of things, because basically the private GP that I've got does follow best practice and is actually trying to do things better than best practice in many regards as to what's best for the patient. However, the NHS has their guidelines and they want it adhered to that way and that way only, and because of that they're constantly calling in to review everything that my private GP does. None of this involves me personally, but they're very proactive in trying to help young transgender people get onto hormones and blockers as soon as possible, especially blockers. There's literally no harm in putting somebody on blockers as early as possible, so that they can have time to either make up their mind as to where they want to go with their transition, if they even want to transition, and to not have to go through all the angst and depression that comes with puberty when you're essentially the wrong gender. You don't want to have the puberty that doesn't correspond with the gender you feel you are, and that's usually when you see the upswing in teenage and younger sometimes depressions and suicides, which is still the biggest killer of transgender people in the UK and probably worldwide, is just the fact that you can't get access to, in this country anyway, the care you need in a timely manner. I've documented before my experience with the NHS and the gender clinic and how long it's taken me to get review and seen, and even with having been with my private practice now, I'm probably going to be looking at somewhere between from my initial review to the gender clinic and actually getting on hormones, which I've been on for 29 months now, if not 29 months now. I will be looking at least 31 or 32 months from that initial review before I get onto HRT and blockers with the NHS. Those sort of timescales to teenagers and people that are just starting puberty and are just discovering all this for the first time are crazy. You can literally go through puberty and out the other side in those sort of timescales. All the damage is done, it's too late, and then everything has to be corrected with invasive surgery, which is why Dr. Helen Weatherly and the Gender GP service understand this and try to put things on pause as soon as possible, and also try to get people on cross-sex hormones as soon as possible in order to waylay all this and to get the best results for that patient. So basically they have recently started up a change.org page with a petition to get them more support and raise the profile of the fact that transgender people in the country are sort of constantly left on these ridiculous timescales, and that the care system for transgender people with the services we have at the moment is kind of broken and needs to be addressed. And on top of that, they've also started up a new podcast as well, which is I find to be reasonably informative, and it gives you a sort of way to hear Dr. Weberly and other members of the team talk about how they feel about transition and various states of things that are going on for transgender people in the world at large. So there will be links below in the description to both the .org page, change.org page, and to the Helen Webley's podcast. If you have the means and you are able to safely move forward with, you're in a safe space where you can transition, Dr. Webley's service, or the Webley's service I should say, and see about progressing with your transition through them as an interim between, as a bridge and as an interim care between, figuring out that you're transgender and that you want to medically transition, and then finally getting the things you want with the NHS. Please lend her and her husband the support they need in order to continue supporting transgender people, especially the younger and more vulnerable ones of us out there. So I thank you for your time, and I wish you all the best this holiday season, and I'll see you in my next video. Mama, bye! Hello, it's Hayley again. I've just come out of another Daventry, what I thought was another assessment, a second assessment. In fact it wasn't, it was just a nurse's assessment apparently. These people seem to do nothing but non-stop assessments, because nurse's assessment where it was weight, height, blood pressure, pulse, lung capacity, things like that. It wasn't the full medical that I thought, it wasn't any of that, and it was just a discussion about what resources I'm looking to use, even though I went through that last time. I handed in my gender story thing in neat as required, and I also brought a copy of my blood tests results with me, because as I thought and worried, my GP hadn't bothered to forward them, or hadn't forwarded them. So if I hadn't have done that, they'd probably not be even looking into me getting HRT or continuing my HRT without them results. So good job I already thought ahead and was prepared for my GP's stupidity. Anyway, it's done, and I won't be hearing anything in terms of the second assessment that I thought I was having until basically February. Then in the meantime, they're going to refer me to SALT, which is the speech and language therapists, so I can have a second crack at voice therapy and see if I can make an improvement with the actual transgender experts this time, as opposed to just my local speech therapist, she was very good, and as I documented for more than a year last year, that everything I went through with my voice, she would put in a lot of effort and we worked really hard, but I'm still not where I want to be, and so I'm hoping that by coming here for a few more, they said 6 sessions, I can get a more natural tone all the time, and more results. She's apparently got a 7 to 8 week waiting list, so basically it's a very dreary and miserable November day today, and I should hear something in a very dreary and miserable January day. So at least there's not much happening between now and Christmas, so I can focus on that now, and just making sure that all my results and things are up to date and they're kept in the loop. And just carry on until then, I guess. Anyway, thank you, and I'll catch up with you later. Thank you all, bye.